When couples exchange vows, they typically promise to love, honor, and protect one another. But what happens when the person you trust to protect and love you becomes the person that puts your life in danger? Hi, I'm Cam,
And I'm Dev.
and you're listening to Criminalish, a true crime podcast where two best friends exchange stories ranging from the wild and wacky to the downright messed up. So, Dev, today I am going to be telling you about the attempted murder of Noela Rukundo. Have you heard of this story before?
I don't believe I have.
All right, well, before we get into the details, what you drinking?
So, you remember that time back in 2020 when everybody was obsessed with foaming their coffee?
I think so, yeah.
So, I decided to bring that back, and I've become recently re-obsessed with just making my own coffee at home. And I made myself a little like foamy espresso. Instead of using instant coffee, I used instant espresso and made myself a little foaming like iced latte at home. And I added some caramel and everything because your girl loves caramel. And she's pretty good for a at home, instant coffee little drink. But I'm trying to get into making my own coffee at home instead of going out and buying it. So that's what I'm drinking. What are you drinking, friend?
I am drinking a little rum spritz. So it has rum, some cherry limeade seltzer, and a little bit of squeezed lemon in there. So I got some lemon seeds at the bottom. And it's pretty good.
Lovely. That sounds very refreshing.
So, like I said, I am going to be talking about the attempted murder of Noela Rukundo. And I know our last couple episodes were pretty heavy with the story of Ambar and the story of Dylan Groves. So I did want to do something a little bit lighter today. I don't have any trigger warnings for the story. However, if things do come up, I will call them out before I get into it. So I actually wasn't able to find that much information on Noela's upbringing, aside from the fact that she was born in Burundi, which is a small country in Central Africa, and was raised by her stepmother. And her stepmother, even though she wasn't her biological mother, she really did play that mother role for Noela. We also know that in 2004, Noela had 5 children from a previous partner. And around this time, she'd also come to Australia as a refugee fleeing Burundi. And the reason that she was fleeing is that Burundi was going through a bad civil war at this time that lasted from 1993 to 2005. And when she got to Australia, she began working with a social worker who worked at the refugee agency. And that social worker introduced her to a man named Belenga Kalala, who was actually another refugee who'd come from the Democratic Republic of the Congo. And they were introduced because Belenga was working as a translator for the refugee agency as well, because he spoke both Swahili and English. And so just a little bit of background about Belenga Kalala. Like I said, he was born in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, or DRC, and he'd also come to Melbourne, Australia in 2004 as a refugee as well. And in the DRC, there was also just a lot of fighting going on, and he'd actually lost his wife and son after members of the rebel army had come to his village and basically went on a rampage and killed a bunch of people. So soon after arriving in Melbourne, Belenga was able to settle and adapt fairly well, primarily because of his English skills. Like I said, he was working as a translator at the refugee agency. He was also working at a seafood processing plant and a forklift operator at a warehouse. So he was able to establish himself pretty well and get settled in maybe more quickly than other refugees could, primarily because of his language skills. And so, like I said, Noela and Belenga met through the refugee agency, and they eventually fell in love, got married, moved in together, and they had 3 more children. So this brought their total number of children to 8. But it seemed like they were in love and they were really enjoying their family life. So I'm going to fast forward to February 2015. And this is when Noela actually had to return home to Burundi for the first time for her stepmother's funeral. Like I said before, even though this was her stepmother, Noela really considered this woman like a mother, and she was really emotional after her passing. And so after the funeral events, Noela comes back to her hotel room in Bujumbura, which is the largest city in Burundi, around early evening. And this is when she got a call from her husband, Belenga, and he said that he'd been trying to get in touch with her all day. And he was like, what's going on? And she told him basically, I'm just about to get in the bed. I'm not feeling great, just got done with my mother's funeral. And so Belenga consoled her and said, you know what, rather than getting in the bed, maybe you should go out for a walk and that could help lift your spirits up. So Noela takes her husband's advice and goes on a walk. But soon after she leaves the area of the hotel, she sees a man walking towards her. And this man points a gun at her and tells her, quote, "Don't scream. If you start screaming, I will shoot you. They're going to catch me, but you will already be dead." End quote. So Noela did what she was told, and she allows a man to direct her into a car that had 2 more armed men inside. Shortly after she gets in the car, they put a scarf on her face so that she couldn't see where the car was going. And the car drives for about 30 to 40 minutes before stopping. After it stops, the kidnappers push Noela outside the car and into a building where she was then strapped to a chair. And this has already been a whirlwind of events, but Dev, I will tell you, the events that happen next are strange, to say the least. So Noela is strapped to this chair, and she hears one of the kidnappers tell the other to call their boss. And soon after this, another one of the kidnappers starts asking Noela, what did she do to the person who hired these kidnappers for this person to want them to kill her? Like, you must have really did something bad to this person who hired us for them to have called this hit. And Noela's thinking, what are you talking about? She's like, who could have so much beef with me that they would order hitmen to kill me? And she is just super confused because she can't think of anyone who would do this. So she asked them, who ordered this hit? Who hates me so much that they want me dead? And the kidnappers tell her, your husband, Belenga. And Noela is in disbelief at this point because in her mind, it's always been my man, my man, my man. So how could her man do this to her? And she literally says, quote, my husband can't kill me. You are lying, end quote. And after this, the leader of the group slaps her and tells her if she doesn't believe them, he'll just call Belenga himself. And so he does just that. He calls Belenga and puts the phone on speaker. When he picks up, the leader of the kidnapper says, quote, we already have her, end quote. And Belenga replies, quote, kill her, end quote. And at this point, the kidnappers start telling Belenga how they're going to get rid of Noela's body. And she ends up fainting because it's just too much for her. I'm sure she's dealing with the grief of losing the woman who was like a mother to her. And now her whole world has been turned upside down. The man that she loved and she thought loved her wants her dead.
Girl, even I'm speechless. No, you could say it. I had to factory reset right there. You know what's so sad is based on how you started this episode, I had a feeling that it had to be her husband. But the big part of me just so desperately wanted to believe that it wasn't going to be her husband. And I feel so bad for this woman. You were set up. He sent you out of the house to tell you, oh, go take a walk. Go relax. It'll be good for you. And he set you up.
Right. He pretended like he was consoling you, worried about your well-being.
Right. And I've already said this on this podcast before, but when you set somebody up, that is an extra level of coldness and calculation that really sits uneasy with me. I absolutely hate it. It's really hard for me to feel sympathy for you or for me to like listen to the other side if I hear that you set this person up.
Yeah, because you thought about it. You had a lot of intent. You planned this.
Mm-hmm. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
So I don't think Noella was out for a long time because by the time she regains consciousness, the kidnappers are just wrapping up their conversation with Belenga. And at this point, Noella has pretty much accepted her fate. But the lead kidnapper tells her that they're not going to kill her because, one, they don't kill women and children, apparently. And two, turns out they know her brother somehow.
You know what? This is what I love. And this is how I know they're real gangsters and they're real thugs, because real thugs still have honor. There is very much still honor amongst thieves. You know, if you don't understand what I mean by that, I can't explain it to you. It's just the thing. But even when people are really in the streets, there is still a code of ethics. I know that sounds so weird, but there is a code of ethics. And then not only, how do you happen to hire 3 hitmen who know the victim's brother? How do you do that? Like, how do we even get there?
I think at least one of them knew the brother. I don't know if all 3 of them knew the brother, but I think at least one of them knew the brother. And they were like, wait a minute, that's so-and-so's sister. And that, on top of her being a woman, I think is why they were like, nah, let's figure out what you did to this person. Because we don't kill women and children, but if you did some real dirty stuff, we might reconsider.
Right. Or even, I was even coming at it from the perspective of, you know what, we kidnapped you and we did all this and we called your man in front of you so that you understand just how serious it is. Right. They kind of provided proof in a way, which in a way is going to force her out of the denial, because of course nobody wants to believe that their man would go out of their way to hire 3 hitmen to kill them. Nobody wants to believe that. So in a way, they just said, man, we're going to shut down all that denial right now. He did it. Here he is on the phone. Sorry, sis.
Yeah.
Dang, they said receipts, timeline, screenshots, everything.
Oh, they definitely said that we gonna give you the receipts, because the lead kidnapper starts giving her more information about Belenga's plot. And he tells her Belenga paid them back in November. Baby girl, he been plotting this. It is February.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Months? Months?
Yeah. The kidnapper is literally like, how did you not notice anything? They're kind of mad at Noella. I think they're like mad and frustrated because they're like, you were living with this man that wants you dead and you didn't notice anything? You thinking your husband just lovey-dovey and you didn't notice anything? So they've already decided and told Noella they're not going to kill her. So I guess the kidnapper is like, you know what? I might ruin my reputation as a hitman and a kidnapper. So let me make sure this is really worth it. So he calls Belenga and he's like, all right, man, we are going to need some more money to finish this job. And the kidnapper asked Belenga for 3,400 Australian dollars. Now, this is on top of the 7,000 Australian dollars that Belenga originally paid them. And all of this in total converts to about $7,000 in US currency. So Belenga pays. And I guess he's like, you know what? I really want this woman dead. So let me comply. I mean, because if you don't pay your hitman, that's kind of a liability.
That's mad liability. That's mad liability. But also, I hate when I hear this crap. You're really telling me that your wife, the mother of 8 children, is only worth $7,000? That's it?
Right.
And also, obviously, I'm not on the kidnapper side. I'm kind of on their side because they're not going to do it. But, you know, they still took the money and whatever anyway, which maybe, again, they were just trying to finesse homeboy. And if they finessed homeboy, I support the finessing. But also, it's $7,000 amongst the 3 of y'all. This just doesn't feel like a good business investment. This doesn't feel like y'all are getting enough of a payday each from this.
Well, I would also say $7,000 in Burundi might go a lot further than it would in Australia or the US.
Very fair. Very fair. Still, it don't feel like enough.
I feel like there is really no amount that would be enough for me to take somebody's life.
Come on now.
That's just me, because there's not enough therapy in the world that would help me get past that.
Come on now.
Besides the fact that I don't think I could get away with it.
Oh, I for damn sure can't get away with it. You see all this hair on my head? I'm going to leave hair. I'm going to leave fingerprints. I'm going to leave skin cells. My bronzer gonna be at the crime scene. They gonna know it's me.
Yeah. So around the same time, Noela's family in Burundi is getting worried because they can't find her and they haven't heard from her. So her brother calls Belenga and asks for about $500 to pay the police to start an investigation. So I'll just say that the police in Burundi, there's a lot of corruption there. So it seemed like, in order to really get something moving at the pace that they wanted, they needed to pay them to get them to do it. And because Belenga needs to play the part of the concerned husband, he sends her brother the money.
That's actually surprising to me, friend, because I thought for sure you were going to say that he didn't send no money. I thought for sure you were going to say that he ain't send no money.
Well, Dev, he did send the money because, like I said, he needed to play the part of the concerned husband. After Noela had been missing for a couple of days, he told everyone in the community, oh, she died in a tragic accident in Burundi.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, that's ballsy. That's ballsy as hell.
So, of course, everyone's grieving with him, sending him food and everything like that. But before we even get into that, let's go back to Burundi. So after she'd been held for 2 days, the kidnappers released Noela and told her that she had 80 hours to leave the country. They basically said, you gotta go. We not gonna kill you. But if your husband finds out you're still alive, that doesn't mean that he won't hire somebody else. So on top of this, they also give Noela evidence that she can use to prove her husband tried to have her killed. They gave her a memory card that had recorded conversations of him discussing the hit and receipts from Western Union transfers.
Receipts, proof, timeline, screenshots, everything.
And what did they ask of Noela? They told her they wanted to go and warn the other, quote, stupid women like her, end quote, about what happened so that they can make better lives for themselves and get away from violent husbands. These are the most morally complex hitmen I have ever heard about.
Right.
But it seemed like they were really pissed off. One, that Noela was in the situation with a man who wanted to kill her and had no idea. And they were like, you need to tell other women, y'all may not be safe around your husbands. And they were also really pissed that Belenga had made it to Australia. He made it out of all the violence and stuff that was around them. And he was using the money that the government gave to him to pay for a hit on his wife.
Right. Right.
Like I said, very morally complex hitman.
Very, because, of course, we don't victim blame on this podcast. That will never happen here. And I think it's so interesting that they tell her, you need to go warn stupid women like you, quote, end quote. But if she has no idea that he wants her dead, how can we assume that he's actually being violent towards her on a regular basis? There's no way that he's going to outwardly be violent to her if he wants her dead, because if she dies, that immediately makes him look suspicious. And he's clearly been planning the murder for 4 months to try to get as much time between when he asked y'all to carry it out and when it happened. Like he's trying to play chess and y'all are playing checkers.
And none of what I'm about to say is corroborated. It's just me speculating. It feels to me like this kidnapper was maybe projecting, and maybe one of his family members was in a situation with a man who was violent and he wished that they would have just left. So that's what it's feeling like to me, is just projection and him assuming things about Noela and her situation.
Fair.
But Dev, before we get into what Noela did next, I'm curious. What would you do in this situation? So your husband tried to have you killed, but the kidnappers let you go, and they gave you the evidence you needed to prove that he tried to have you killed. What's your next move?
Well, actually, my next move is I'm going to take them up on that 80 hours and I'm going to be out of there. But I ain't going home. I'm going to have to find a different country to reside in. I ain't going home. I can't go to Australia. We might have to see how the States look this time of year. We might have to see how that looks. So that's step number 1. Step number 2, I'm making a copy of all the evidence they sent me. I'm making a digital copy, probably 3. I'm going to send one of the copies to the Australian police. I'm going to send one of the copies to a divorce attorney. And I'm sending the third copy to him with a mean email saying, I got your ass. You're done. I'm going to figure out which country is beautiful this time of year. And I'm going to be living there because I can't stay in Australia. And he don't need to know where I'm at.
Interesting. So before I get back into today's story, I want y'all to know about all the things Criminalish has to offer. You can subscribe to our Patreon for as little as $3 a month. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel for an audio and visual experience. And you can keep up with all things Criminalish on Instagram and TikTok. Let's get back to the story. So after being dropped off on the side of the road around midnight, the first call that Noela makes is actually to her pastor. And it seems like this was a man who not only was this her pastor, but it seems like this was someone she had a lot of trust and respect for. And when she told him what happened, at first, he also couldn't believe that Belenga would do something like that. But she convinced him and asked him not to tell anyone else that she was alive. Because like I said, by this point, Belenga already told everyone she's dead. And on February 22nd, 2015, just a few days after she was kidnapped, Noela arrived in Melbourne, Australia. She was able to get home with the help of the Kenyan and Belgian embassies, and she pulled up to the home that she shared with Belenga around 7:30 p.m. Like I said, Belenga already told everyone Noela's dead, so because they were known and loved in the community, specifically the African and Congolese community, many people had come by to give him comfort. They brought food, they donated money to help him pay for the funeral costs. And so when Noela pulls up, she sees him leading a group of mourners to their car. And as the group drove away, Noela walks up to Belenga. He probably thought he was seeing a ghost. He was so shook. And he apparently starts walking towards Noela very slowly. She said it was like he was walking on broken glass, and he's talking to himself. Then when he gets to Noela, he touches her on the shoulder and says, quote, "Noela, is it you?" End quote. And when he realized she wasn't just a figment of his imagination, he started screaming about how sorry he was. And all Noela said was, quote, "Surprise, I'm still alive." End quote.
Surprise, motherfucker.
And after this, Noela called the police on him and got a court order against him. And Noela also handed over the evidence to them. I'm not sure if she made any copies or not, but the police now have the evidence. And I guess they wanted some more evidence, so they asked her to call Belenga and try to get him to confess over the phone. And a confession is exactly what he gave. He told Noela that he tried to have her killed because he thought she was cheating on him. And he begged for her forgiveness. And not that this matters much, because cheating is not a valid reason to kill somebody, but Noela says that accusation was not even true. And I'm also like, this woman got 8 children. What time do you think she has to be cheating on you?
Right.
And so even though Belenga had confessed to Noela over the phone, during his police interview, he maintained that he didn't even try to have her killed. The interview lasted for hours until police confronted Belenga with the evidence that Noela had handed over, plus his confession over the phone. And at this point, he started to cry. And when the police asked him why he did it, he said, quote, "Sometimes the devil can come into someone to do something, but after they do it, they start thinking, why I did that thing." End quote. Great justification.
Sir, you are going to spend an eternity in hell. An eternity. So you and the devil are going to get well acquainted with one another. Have fun. Cam, I got so many thoughts. I got so many thoughts. I'm going to start with the whole cheating allegation. This baseless cheating allegation. Even if you thought she was cheating on you, go through her phone. Follow her when she be leaving for work. You know, if we want to be crazy, turn on her location services, you know, put a tracker in her car, do something normal, crazy people do.
This is like 2014, 2015.
Boom.
The technology is there.
The technology is there. You know what we don't do is we don't plan a hit for 4 months. So you thought she was cheating on you for at least 5 months because you bought the hit in November. So you think she's cheating on you and you just running around everything all hunky-dory for 4 months planning a hit because of cheating. And again, it's like you said, she's a mother of 8. She ain't got no time to cheat on you. Who's got time for that?
Ain't nobody got time for that.
Number 2, are you stupid or are you dumb? And I feel like this might be a situation of both. Because how the hell are you going to confess on the phone that you did it and give all these apologies and say, baby, I'm so sorry. Baby, please don't leave. Don't send me to jail, baby. All I did was pay $7,000 to have a couple of men kill you. That's all I did. I deserve forgiveness. God and whatnot. Sprinkle some Jesus in it. It'll be okay. I promise. The devil made me do it. That's the justification. And you really think that if she had already called the police on you, she wouldn't record you and immediately hand that over to the police? Like, come on now. There's no way you seriously thought she wasn't going to get that information to the police. There's no way you thought that. I refuse to believe that you're that stupid. And then to deny everything to officers when you already confessed to your wife. And then, I'm so sorry. If you don't live in the South, you're not going to understand why it pisses me off so much when people blame the devil. In Southern households, this whole "the devil made me do it" is a bunch of BS, right? So nothing pisses me off more than people who blame the devil for that. The devil took control of you for those 4 months while you were planning the murder of your wife? While you planned to take away 8 children's mother? That's the devil made you do that? Is that why you were walking up to her in slow motion? You were like, oh my God, the spirits have finally come to get me for my misdeeds. You thought you saw a ghost? But the devil made you do it. Stop it. Stop it, sir.
So a few months later, in September 2015, Belenga Kalala pled guilty to incitement to murder. And on December 11th, 2015, he was sentenced to 9 years in prison. During sentencing, Chief Justice Marilyn Warren said Belenga's crime was, quote, premeditated and motivated by unfounded jealousy, anger, and a desire to punish Ms. Rukundo, end quote. During sentencing, Chief Justice Marilyn Warren took into account the fact that he had no prior criminal charges, had been a hard worker, and had a rough upbringing due to the ongoing war in the DRC, and his experience of seeing his wife and child murdered. And for context, sentencing for attempted murder in Australia can range from 7 to 16 years, with the median sentencing being about 12 years. So he got a little bit more than the minimum, but not the maximum. One of Noela's sons spoke to the news outside the court and talked about how his mother was still scared for her life. He said, quote, she works for us, she feeds us, she clothes us, and she was doing the same thing for Belenga. I looked at him, but I couldn't see a man, because I believe a man would not do something like that, end quote. So Belenga would have been eligible for parole after serving 6 years, so it's possible that he was released in 2021. However, since his sentence was only 9 years, he would have been released this year either way. That being said, I cannot confirm when his actual release date was and if it's happened yet. So Noela has said that she still has nightmares about her kidnapping and hearing Belenga tell them to kill her. But despite all that he did, Noela says that she holds no hate for him. She said, quote, he's a human being. From my heart, I forgive him. Let God judge him, end quote. And even though many people, when hearing this story, they are inspired by Noela's courage and how she showed up and really just showed this man that his plot, all that money he spent, was for nothing. A lot of people are lifting Noela up. But unfortunately, the people in Melbourne's Congolese community actually blamed her for the fact that Belenga was in jail. Someone left threatening messages, and one day when she got home, her back door was broken down. I know that around 2016, she'd asked the Department of Human Services to help her find a new place to live, but it's unclear what the outcome of this was. But given all that she'd experienced and the lack of support she was getting from her community, she'd resolved to start a new life for her and her children and put the past behind her. And that is the end of our story.
That pisses me off so much because you go and attack the woman who's been kidnapped and was supposed to be killed. And the only reason she wasn't killed is because there was some honor amongst thieves. That's so stupid to me, because you're really going to sit here and say, oh, she's the reason he's in jail. Yes. Yes. Because she took the steps to protect herself and her children. She called the police. She did what she was supposed to do to ensure that he went to jail. But you know whose actions facilitated this whole wheel of him ending up in prison? His. He would have never ended up in prison if he didn't go pay 3 dudes $7,000 to kill his wife and the mother of at least 3 of his children, but 8 children total. That's whose fault it is that he's in jail.
Exactly. At the end of the day, he is the reason he's in jail.
Exactly. That's so stupid to me, but unfortunately disappointed but not surprised that people will always find a way to blame the victim for things that are not their fault. Because for some reason, we live in a society that would rather question why somebody has traumatic things happen to them instead of holding the people who do the traumatic things to them accountable.
Yeah, and I feel like we see this happen often in Black American communities too. And it's just weird. Why are you not holding this man, this adult, accountable for his actions? Why are you babying him like he has no power over his decisions? This is a grown man who paid almost $10,000 to have another person killed. The same person who y'all were mourning when y'all thought she was actually dead.
Come on now. Come on now. And to circle it back to the original conversation, he wasn't prioritizing his children either when he planned to kill their mother.
Exactly. Because how are you going to take care of 8 children by yourself? The other thing I will say, though, is when it comes to older Black men being widowed, Lord Jesus, the older women in the community come to it like moths to a flame.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh. So maybe he actually would not have been struggling for that long because, yeah, older women, they be waiting for that.
Oh, and if you think that Cam is talking about, oh, maybe older as in like in their 40s and 50s, no, I had a great uncle who died a couple of years ago, but his wife died 6 years before he did. He was 89 years old when his wife died. And those ladies at the church were constantly bringing him food and checking up on him and doing everything for him. This man is almost 90 and these old women are acting like that. It is a thing. It is a thing and it is concerning.
Yes. And it's not to say that widows don't deserve comfort.
Of course, of course.
But y'all are trying to give something else other than comfort.
Come on now. I agree. Widows need love too. Most people deserve a second chance at love. As we wrap up today's discussion, we're going to move into our segment called Today in Crime, where we'll describe a crime or crime-related event that took place on this day. On September 6, 2018, off-duty Dallas police officer Amber Geiger shot Botham Jean, an unarmed Black man, in his own apartment. Returning to her apartment complex in Dallas, Texas, police officer Amber Geiger entered the apartment of Botham Jean, believing it to be her own. The apartment door was ajar, she later testified, and when she entered, she found a man inside. She fired her weapon, killing him. Amber was not arrested until 3 days later and was originally charged with manslaughter, rousing the anger of the public. She was eventually charged with murder. Amber claimed that exhaustion after a 13-hour shift caused her to mistakenly climb an extra flight of stairs and enter the wrong apartment, where she became frightened when she saw the silhouette of what she believed to be a burglar in what she believed to be her home. She also claimed that she told him to raise his hands and that he began to move towards her before she shot him in the chest. Prosecutors, however, argued that Amber could hardly have confused a different door with a different doormat on a different level of the apartment complex as her own. That Botham's behavior, he was sitting on the couch eating ice cream, bore no resemblance to that of a burglar, and that Amber broke police protocol by entering the apartment and firing her gun rather than calling for backup from the nearby police station. Despite the judge's decision to allow the jury to consider the Castle Doctrine, a Texas statute which justifies deadly force in defense of one's home, the jury found Amber guilty of murder, a charge she has since appealed. Amber was the first Dallas police officer to be convicted of murder since 1973. Amber Geiger would later be sentenced to only 10 years in prison for the murder of Botham Jean. And that is what happened today in crime. If you found this story interesting, please leave a house emoji in the comments.
Unfortunately, we have had so many cases of police brutality in recent history, not even just the past 20 years. I'm talking like the last 5-10 years. We've had so many cases that it's hard for me to keep count. This one was especially upsetting because this man was literally sitting on his couch eating ice cream. He didn't even call the police. He wasn't even outside. Not that doing any of those things justifies what has happened to other people who've been killed in those situations, but this man was doing nothing. And the fact that she only got 10 years for what was breaking and entering and murder, in my opinion.
Exactly. You broke into his house. You broke into where he lives.
And she got 10 years for murder in Texas.
Come on now. Texas that still does the death penalty for murder. And I'm sorry, I'm going to say it. Texas, who would have given a black man a death penalty. Because if the roles were reversed, that black man would have got the death penalty. For sure.
For sure. And the fact that she was the first Dallas police officer to be convicted of murder since the 70s. And knowing Texas that she was not the first one to commit a murder since the 70s, that is wild.
Wild as hell. And again, 10 years ain't... She only got one more year than Belenga did, and he didn't even kill anybody. Are you serious?
Yeah. People get locked up longer for nonviolent crimes.
Absolutely. Go talk to the Gophers who are sitting in Fulton County Corrections. It's ridiculous.
Any other thoughts, friend?
Nope. That's all I got.
Well, thank you to our listeners for joining us on this episode. I would especially like to thank ABC News, Washington Post, and BBC for providing most of the material for this episode. If you'd like to check out photos related to this case, follow us at Criminalish Podcast on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube.
Listeners, if you like what you hear, please be sure to tell a friend and leave us a 5-star review wherever you're listening to the Criminalish Podcast. And if you're listening on YouTube, be sure to subscribe to our channel and feel free to leave any comments or questions. As always, stay nosy, my friends. Bye.
Bye.